Clark's Desert Boot is probably the most popular chukka boot in the world. I mean, it's not as popular as it was like 10 years ago when it was famously the default footwear of the male fashion advice subreddit, back when that was a good subreddit, but it's still got to be the most popular chukka. And to clear up our terminology here a little bit, chukka is the name for basically this kind of footwear, this like half boot, half shoe. That's also typified by having just 2 or 3 pairs of eyelets. Generally, the idea is that a desert boot is a chukka boot with a crepe outsole and probably a suede upper. People tend to think of a desert boot as a chukka that's more explicitly made for hot weather wear. And here's the thing, Clark's Desert Boot, it's a pretty good desert boot, especially for the price, which is like $150, $160. This video isn't like my video on Doc Martens alternatives, where the central idea is that Doc Martens are bad boots, which I think is true and you should get something else. I don't think the Clark's Desert Boot is that bad. If it were twice the price, it would be, but it's not. The suede is from a good tannery, it's got relatively sophisticated stitch-down construction, and I can list reasons someone might want something more complex, but there are also reasons why this is a good hot weather boot as is. Like the upper is not very thick, it's pretty hard to resole, the sole is so thin and soft that it's not very durable. It's generally pretty insubstantial feeling, it's very light, it doesn't have a thick leather midsole, it feels more like a sneaker than a boot. All that contributes to it being a pretty good hot weather boot, and a good boot for guys who are more used to sneakers, which is probably most guys. But this video is for guys who like chukkas, like desert boots, and would like to try something maybe more robust or something more likely to last through a resole operation, like something more long lasting that will endure more wear before needing a resole. It's for guys who might like something sturdier underfoot or something more suited to the outdoors, or guys who want a chukka that can dress up more easily than this one. Whatever reason brought you to this video, I've got a boot for you. So let's see what's out there. So this one I'm putting first because it most neatly fits the criteria of a better Clark's Desert Boot, because like it's the same look, it's the same price, and it's better made. Thursday Boot Company's Scout is better value for the same money, even though it might not be what you want. The pluses for this boot, chukkas are often worn business casual, and there are plenty of Scouts, other Scouts, not this one, that will work better for that than Clark's Desert Boot or any of the other Desert Boot leathers. Because the dressier Scouts from Thursday have like a harder rubber sole, and there are some nicer, dressier leather options too. And the Scout is also more structured. Like the Clark's upper is pretty thin and floppy. You can actually see your toes through these sometimes when you're wearing them. Thursday's is fully lined with a glove leather, and the toe is a little bit more structured as well. Not a lot, but it does have more shape to it. So that makes it easier to wear in nice situations if you wanted to. But the Scout also comes in more outdoorsy versions as well. They've got a few here with really thick wedge rubber soles and more hard-wearing leathers. So like whether you want a dressier or a tougher Clark's Desert Boot, you've got options here. But there is one Scout that Thursday made that is clearly meant to be, just like a leveled up Clark's Desert Boot. And it's this one. It's in snuff suede. It is the only one they sell with a crepe rubber sole, but it also has a lot of differences to Clark's. Again, it has more structure to it. This crepe sole is much harder and tougher, and the Scout also has more layers underfoot. Like it has cork filling that will mold to your foot shape like traditional boots. It has the pour-on foam insole that Thursday likes to put in their boots to improve shock absorption. And this construction is much more water resistant and easy to resole than the Desert Boot. So objectively, there's more labor and materials and performance and longevity here than Clark's for the same price. Except that, all those extra layers underfoot and the leather lining do make it a bit less breathable and heavier. But however you cut it, this is a lot more boot for the same price. It is better value. There is, however, an alternative that is both tougher and cheaper, although it is much, much more casual. This is the Veli from South Africa's Jim Green. It doesn't look a lot like Clark's, but if you're someone who's looked at a chukka and says, well, I like the idea of a chukka boot, but I would like one that can take more of a beating, this might be your alternative here. Or if you just want a chukka that's cheaper than this one. Or you want one that's more authentic, actually, maybe. Because while not everyone agrees on the history, desert boots have a lot of history in Africa. They were worn by soldiers in World War II's Western Desert Campaign and by British soldiers in North Africa. Cairo is part of that whole story where the design might have been refined. But they say that South Africa, where Jim Green makes these, originated the desert boot with its ancestor, the Veldschoen boot. Veldschoen is a type of stitched down like construction that is hard to say, and eventually they just got called Velis. Jim Green's here stand out for being super wide and round at the toe. So you can move around more easily in these, go hiking, that kind of stuff in them. They're also a lot more casual, even more casual than the Clark's Desert Boot as a result. They do have a crepe rubber sole, but it's a tough one. They've got a more robust stitched down build that make them a bit more waterproof and a bit more easy to resole than Clark's. The Velis have a steel shank in here to help with stability, which many find helps to limit foot pain if they're on their feet all day, especially compared to like the super squishy and unstable shoes like Clark's. Anyway, you get it. It's a more outdoorsy desert boot, and it's cheaper, and it's made in South Africa if you like that more for its historicity or because you prefer that to Clarks being made in Vietnam or Thursday being made in Mexico. But if you prefer the sound of Italian-made desert boots, this next alternative is $225, and the brand is well known for their love of crepe rubber soles and of suede uppers, and for this particular boot of theirs. So it is a good fit for this list. This boot is a good part of this brand's DNA. And if you're a bit of a boot guy, you already know that I'm talking about Astorflex here. This is an example of the very rare brand that is under $300, yet widely respected by many of the world's snubbiest boot enthusiasts. Like, they're sold at LaFaux here in New York City, which is a really important tick of approval in this industry. Astorflex has the small family-owned workshop kind of identity that a lot of people look for when buying boots. It's in its 9th generation of ownership. They're outside of Milan. And truthfully, it might be on this list the best like one-to-one analog of the Clarks Desert Boot, which is to say the shape and look of the Thursdays is just a little bit dressier. The Jim Greens are quite a lot more casual. Astorflex's Brown Flex is here, if you can look at this shot here, it's really right between those two other brands I've mentioned as far as the shape of the toe and just how casual it feels. It's really kind of precisely at the same level, I think, as the Clarks Desert Boot, but higher quality. The Brown Flex is $70-ish more expensive, but you get a desert boot that's made in Italy by a small brand. It's easier to resole than Clarks, and maybe above all, it is as versatile as the classic Clarks Desert Boot, but it has plenty of advantages. It's fully leather lined and it has more material underfoot. It has more stability. It'll mold better to your foot with time because of like the leather underfoot. And yeah, like again, like most of these luxurious touches do make it not breathe quite as well as the Clarks, but nonetheless, I think it's very possible this is like your best, just like Clarks Desert Boot, but higher quality. Now for the one American-made option on this list, Red Wing Heritage sells 2 chukka boots. The work chukka is Goodyear welted like their work boots, but the weekender chukka is their best Clarks Desert Boot alternative because it is very purposefully designed to be less like a work boot and more like what some call a leisure boot, a comfy boot. I have the Weekender Chelsea here, so that's what I'm putting on the table because it's very, very similar, but it's not a chukka. But still, for our purposes here, this is going to be useful. Like every boot so far on this list, the Weekender Chukka, like the Weekender Chelsea, is made with stitch down construction. You can make very beefy or not beefy boots with stitch down, and the Weekender Chukka, like the Chelsea, uses the stitch down method to make a boot that is actually very light and flexible, especially for a Red Wing boot, which are usually like pretty meaty and made with like pretty stiff hardware and Goodyear welts. And if you were here with me, you'd be able to see that the crepe sole on the Weekenders, again, it's the same sole, is actually the thinnest of everything here, which I would definitely consider a pro here, especially if you like the Clarks Desert Boot. Another cool thing here is you get Red Wing's very nice and tough and beautiful and oily work boot leathers on a boot that's actually a lot easier to wear and lighter weight, more flexible than a tough Goodyear welted Red Wing work boot. Lately, Red Wing Heritage has been putting a bit more work into positioning their boots as casual wear for cool kids, which means they've come out with some pretty cool new leathers this year that you might not know about. They've got this really cool off-white rough out. They've got a chocolate brown rough out as well that I love. And Huckberry got an exclusive light blue leather that you can get if you get it on their website instead of Red Wing's. All of these very cool options, especially if you like made in USA or if you're looking for a Red Wing boot that's under $300. For the last entry in this video, I would like you to first be very impressed that in this list of high quality boots, nothing has been over $300. It's list alternatives to a $150 boot. You would be missing the mark if everything here was like a $1,000 hand-lasted Japanese horsehide boot or something. But since our theme is nicer chukka boots, when I was coming up with this list, I was like, okay, I gotta have one boot on here where if money is no object, what's like a really fancy brand? And not just a fancy brand that has chukkas, because they all do, but a fancy brand that is known for their chukkas, like for whom the chukka is an important boot. And like John Lofgren's is pretty famous, and I have some expensive Carmina ones too, but the chukka isn't Carmina's thing like the Chelsea is. And then I remembered that outside of Clarks, I think pop culture's most influential chukkas come from Crockett and Jones, who are today's fancy brand. We went all over the world and now we're back in Britain where Clarks is from, except that Crockett and Jones actually makes their boots in Britain. This one's made in Vietnam. I actually went and visited Crockett and Jones' store in Manhattan last week just for this video. And while overall Crockett and Jones sells more dress shoes, when it comes to boots, I think they're best known for their chukkas. That's why there's still a really impressive variety of them. And the most famous is James Bond's. I talked about this in a video I shot at their store a year or two ago that you can check out if you want to learn more about this brand. But I think every nice leather shoe and boot Daniel Craig wore in his films were from Crockett and Jones. And the Molten is the one he wore, and it is their best selling chukka. Or at least it was the year that No Time to Die came out. It's $720. It's a really good option that's super tough, but can also work pretty well business casual, I think. Of course, I only remembered the James Bond angle when I was about to leave the store and I didn't have time to try it on, but I did have time to try on the boot they just call the chukka, which I picked because I thought it might be like a very good Clarks alternative because that chukka is totally unlined, and it has a leather sole. And as I discussed in this sole comparison with a boot maker, leather soles breathe better than crepe rubber. So actually, of all these alternatives, the Crockett Jones chukka actually be the best for hot weather. And it's the cheapest at just $680. It's also a good example of a very smart chukka. As you can see here, it's super slim and sleek and definitely worn with too casual an outfit by me. This is on a British D width, which in Britain means narrow. I also tried out the more casual chukka. It's called Chukka 4, which as you can see is much more nice and roomy if that's what you're after. All that said, right now it's so discounted that I'm assuming it didn't sell well and you won't be able to buy it soon. But for a boot that looks the most like Clark's, but as fancy as it could possibly be, the Chepstow from Crockett Jones is the best fit, if it's there now. Or alternatively, if you really want to ball out, the Q Chukka is almost $950 because apparently because that leather is super hard to make. And for the record, while I listed more of Crockett Jones's chukkas than any other brand, I do not make a dollar from Crockett Jones. They just don't do that kind of internet marketing. I have made $0 from this. I'm just spending all this time on them because they are the appropriate brand to talk about when talking about fancy chukkas. All right, man, that's my list. But I do want to give an honorable mention to Old Speed Manufacturing's Dune Docker. It is not really a chukka, but it's a very great short boot designed for summer. It's got a crepe sole, stitched down build, and it's perfect for guys who like not just American manufacturing, but the idea of wearing something made by just one man in a shack in the forest. I visited Dave in Pennsylvania this year. $550 is a super cheap price for a one-man handmade operation in America. You do have to wait 2 months for them to be made for you. That's just how these kinds of brands work. You don't get to complain about that. Solid option, and all of these are very solid options as well for different reasons. Your more dressy chukkas, your more outdoorsy chukkas, your more Clark's Desert Boot-like chukkas, more Red Wing chukkas. Anyway, you get it. Otherwise, that's my list. Let me know which one you like. Let me know what I missed, and subscribe here as well if you just went up here for more stuff on casual and durable footwear and menswear. My name is Nick. I did not introduce myself before. I'm Nick. Goodbye.